leave a little highlight in the pupil of the eye. I always like to do that. Very delicate thin lines here. Sometimes if the penciler doesn't draw it, you have to kind of decide how thick to make the lines, and how thin to do the lines. You know, if you're going to be faithful to the penciler's line thickness in his pencils, or if you're going to add a little flair to it, make some parts thick and thin, that just comes with the experience and observing your own work, other inkers' work, see what seems to work in certain areas, what doesn't. For instance, lines within the face, I generally tend to keep thin compared to the contour lines. You don't want really thick wrinkles if they're supposed to be fine and delicate. That's going to take away from the look, and it's ultimately not going to make the drawing very effective. Here we go to the teeth. I'm not going to outline each individual tooth. I'm just going over the basic separation of the upper and lower teeth right now. I'm going to use a very thin line to indicate the thin male lower lip. Don't want to accentuate it by making the line too thick. I can say that for the ladies. Plus I'm using a couple broken spots on the lower lip line. I don't want to draw it straight across. There is 2 feathering lines to indicate the protrusion of the upper part of the chin here. As I'm hatching and cross hatching, the lines are parallel to each other, and then they blend together at times, sometimes they don't. Keeping it parallel is just a control thing. You actually just have to work at it and learn. Same with these 3 lines here that I'm doing on the chin to sculpt the chin here. I'm going to do the neckline here for the costume. Since that is just a separation, I'm keeping the line very consistent. No need to do any line weights with that. It's just a thin fabric. Again, same with the darkened side of the tendon here. With the light indication line to its left, I'm going to go down to the neckline, take a break, and continue on. That break will help accentuate the ledge of the neckline, where the fabric starts. Okay, we're done with that. Like I said, I'm going to leave this robotic eye to the circle templates, which we'll do later. Just do a couple quick lines on this thing coming off the oval chest emblem thing. And I think it's time to wash my brush, get it all fresh for the 3rd panel. Oh, hey Katie, what's going on?
Not much. What about you?
Just washing my brush, trying to wrap up this stupid video.
That's not a good attitude.
Well, I worked for free on this video. I'm not getting paid.
Bitch, bitch, bitch.
Yes, that's right. Bitch, 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 out! Crybaby tattletale. Well, all nice and ready for the 3rd panel. Let's do it to it. I'm going to start with the monster, do some of its basic contours. There's actually some feathering coming off the elbows of the monster. Indicates that the arms are rushing forward. It's like a speed line technique. So I'm going to feather into the black there. You know, and if Doug draws just 3 lines, sometimes I'll make it 4 or 5 lines. Sometimes I'll do 3 lines. It's really not important. See, I'm going to put dark shadows on one side of each knuckle. Move down right here. Now I'm going to do the bony protrusions on his back. And at that point, a lot of the inkers will actually just start doing the pen. I stick with the brush just because it's, you know, wet and it's in my hands and I'm too lazy to grab a pen. It's such a waste of me just washing the brush. I have a weird mentality like that. Take it as far as I can. So then I don't have to do as much work with the pen. Still sticking with the broken and irregular line motif at this point, with pretty much all the lines in the monsters except for certain areas of hatching and cross hatching. I'm doing it to separate the muscles, I'm doing it for the wrinkles in the forehead, pretty much everywhere. You know, if you do it in one panel, you gotta do it in any other panels that show that same person or thing to keep it consistent. You don't want inconsistent inking. Like I said, this is getting crazy where I'm inking stuff this small with the brush, but might as well. I can always touch it up later if I have to. Oh, I kind of see he has hatching on the forearm muscle. I don't have to know the name, but I'll say it to impress you. It's a brachioradialis. He's got hatching that goes generally in the same direction as the speed lines, maybe to keep consistency of that arm going forward. Now that I look at it, he's got speed lines coming up on these claws, yet I've already inked speed lines going that way. But it can work. If you want to show the arm going down and forward at the same time, you can look at it that way. I'm going to ink it the way Doug drew it. Let's do a little bit more muscle separation here. Speed lines coming from the rubble. Let me finish this bottom part of his chest. See, now I'm going to do these, I don't know what you call it. It's not water, it almost kind of looks like water, kind of like down here. It's actually like more of a reaction effect of an impact or an explosion. There's a reaction of the ground from it being slammed with the monster's hand, almost like it's sending out shock waves. So I'm going to use a brush again, and I'm going to use thick to thin lines just to give it more of an animated, dynamic characteristic, as opposed to if I just used like a flat, thin line throughout the entire rendering of this ripple effect. And the ripple effect can even shoot off some little baby ripples, whatever these things are that are coming off from it. Some pebbles and rubble coming off of it? Sure, why not? Adds to the effect. Look at that. Call that tracing? I don't see anything under there. I drew that in all by myself. Alright, now I'm going to start inking our female character. It's a small figure, so I'm going to run out some of the ink in my brush so I can get the thinner lines. Basically, she's in the background, so I'm not going to make the lines too thick. Notice even within the figure, I'm using thick and thin lines. I'm kind of alternating thick to thin to thick to thin. Again, it just makes it look a little more animated. You don't have to follow any light rules when you do thick to thin stylistic type contouring. There's not necessarily a rhyme or reason for it, although in some situations it definitely helps if you pay attention to light source and keep the thin lines toward the light source. In this instance, I'm just using it as splash. Also be very careful when you're inking the rear end of females. You gotta keep that as smooth and curvy as the rest of the body. Treat it like you're inking the bust. I'm inking the tube top, I'm making sure that I jut it out from the edge so it's not too flat against the back, just to give it a little bit of form, enveloping a body. And to make the thick part here flow into the thin line seamlessly. Well, that's enough for her. I'm gonna have to go to the smaller brush eventually. I do a couple of these rocks. You know, when I'm doing rocks, I always like to do a double line. For instance, right here, I do a thicker outline and then a really thin parallel line to it. I'll do it again here. You know, line, another line right next to it. You can even put another line coming from that, another line next to that. Different directions, just a stylistic, flashy thing to do. No rhyme or reason. Okay, I might use the smaller brush for his head. His head has a lot of twists and turns in the contour, so that might be better suited for the small brush. I can still do part of the shoulder here. I'll do this side of the chest muscle. A few feathering lines from that. Now I won't always use feathering lines. There's a point where it kind of gets too short to even try to do feathering, in which I'll just use little tick marks with a pen or something. I'll demonstrate a little bit of that later too, of course. But you know, for long flowing lines, you know, that are hatching, cross hatching, yeah, I'll use a brush for feathering. You can also use a pen too if feathering is not your style. You just want to do straight hatching, cross hatching. You can use a French curve if you want to do gradual curved hatch marks. You can use a straight edge if you're doing really long hatching and cross hatching. In fact, I've seen some inkers that will actually draw in a series of triangles and then fill it in with black for feathering, because perhaps they just don't know how to do feathering with a brush. It's a little tedious to do it that way, I would think, but you know, whatever you can do to pull it off. Do keep in mind that to be a pro in this business, you do want to learn the most efficient ways to get work done, as productivity is part of the job. I'm going to move right down to the duck, maybe mess with the contours, give it a little bit more texture, the feathers. It's hard to survive in the industry. You can't be productive if you're going to do your best work on every single page, and you know, you can't get even 5 pages a week done. I don't know of many people who can actually get steady work producing that little. A little more feathering. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll do the couple broken lines or dots and then go into the feathering, or you can add them after the feathering. It gives a very uneven, non-smooth feel to its surface. Sometimes I'll do a series of double-ended tapers, connect a couple lines, draw a couple lines through them. I'll start again, something like that. It's very stylish. It's all for flash. No purpose behind it, really. Thin here, thick here, looks cool. As I said earlier, it is part of the business, especially if you're going to do mainstream superhero stuff. I'm not saying there's no room for other inking styles, but some great slick inkers out there. Scott Williams, Tim Townsend, John Dell. On covers, I usually try to be pretty slick. As a marketing technique, you want to draw the viewer in with the cover. But the reality is, there's not always a situation where you can spend as much time as you want on the interiors. Thick going around the bill, blend it into the thin line, give it a nice little blend. See these little downy hair feathers on top of his head? Do just a few lines, maybe thicken one side of those lines to get a little bit of a lighted dimension. Thin, thick, thin, too thin, another thin, maybe a thick right there. Give it a little bit of variety. There's no formula. Thick eyelash, get a really thin eyelid. You don't want the eyelid line to compete with the eyelash of the duck. Leave a little highlight within the pupil. Or I guess it's a pupil and iris combined. For that duck, it's all black. The head is a circular shape. It's not very practical to go in with an ellipse and a rule, just the small parts. Just swipe it through with the brush. Nobody's gonna pay attention. You know, the splash of water, I'm going to use basically the same approach as the ripple effect of the slamming of the monster's hand. I'm going to do a thick to thin curved lines. Now keep in mind that you don't want it to look too similar. If it looks the same, they're going to think it's the same element. This is not meant to be water. I already inked it, so when I ink this, I'm keeping that in mind, and I try to avoid inking it the same way I ink the ripple effect of the slamming of the arm. So I'm going to ink it almost the same way, except for I'm going to round off some of the points of the water splash just a bit. Not all of them, but a few of them I'm going to round it off. Rounding it off gives it a softer quality of liquid. And also I'm going to throw in some circular, I'll do that later with a pen, but I'm going to throw in some circular bubbles and water drops to further show that it's supposed to be a softer feel to it. Again, I'm alternating thick and thin lines as I'm doing the water here. As for the blow-up kiddie pool that it's in, I'm not going to even do that with the brush. I'm going to use a template. It's supposed to be an elliptical object. You don't have to adhere strictly to pencil lines. You can kind of add more irregularities within the water itself. Like right there, I'll just throw a couple in. Nope, didn't trace that. A couple of drops coming up, and the rest of the drop, it's actually, more practical to just use a pen for that. Throw in some more feathering. Why not? I'll do it in the arm here. A real important tip to keep in mind if you want to do really nice, consistent feathering is usually when you look at your feathering as you're doing it, you're looking at the black line that you make. Kind of train yourself to use your peripheral vision to look at the negative white space in between the black feather lines, because the negative white space should be just as consistent in quality and shape and direction as the black line itself. You just pay attention to the black line, you're ignoring half of the formula for making a successful series of feathering lines. Throw in some dots on the rocks for a little texture effect. If you mask off certain areas, you can do it with a toothbrush or an airbrush. See, there's a black part here representing his hand. I'm going to grab a pencil actually, and I'm going to shape that hand out a little more so I know how to ink it. Just don't draw it too out of alignment with the size of this hand. I'll make that the thumb. This will be the thumb of his left fist. Throw in a little black on there. We'll throw in some suggested light and shadows on there. That's good enough. All right, well, time to wash my brush and move on to the small brush. Oh, hey Lauren, how are you?
Hi, I'm great.
What magazine are you reading?
I don't know.
You don't know? What, you illiterate or something? Doesn't know. Okay, so usually at this point I've got the basic blacks and I've got the basic contouring and features done. For the most part, in some parts I don't because it's too small for the bigger brush. So I'm just going to keep moving inward and do the next set of line work within this smoke here. Nope, smokes are not the funnest thing to ink. And you can easily use a crow quill pen for this. But it's good brush practice. Okay, now as I'm using the small brush, you may notice that I've got my face considerably closer now, as I need to see the details and my eyesight is horrible. I'm going to block off this black area because he's got a grid pattern back there. Mark that off. See, I do a couple of the squiggles in the knee of the monster. I'm basically following the same philosophy as I am with the bigger brush when I do textures and lines and stuff, except this brush enables me to have a little more control with the finer lines than the other one. So my approach really isn't changing. This is her shoe here. The tip of the high heel, the black area here, I'm not going to black it all the way out to the edges because I do want to show the outline of the entire shoe. Otherwise you might think that if I'd blacken in the whole thing straight across and run into the black area of the monster's leg, it's basically going to look like she's got chopped off toes. I'm dipping the small brush more frequently than the big brush because it's not holding as much ink, so the ink runs out a lot faster. Moving on to the shorts, a little flap there. Really thin line to indicate the area where the loopholes are for the belt. Don't want to make that too thin, or else it'll make it look like a belt itself. A little bit of rendering right here to separate the lower arm from the upper arm. Two slightly curved double-ended tapers, very thin lines. Stylistic way to render things. Followed by a thick stroke right there to indicate a hint of bicep separation. I'm going to finish these wrinkling lines on the skin of the arm of the monster. Irregular wavy lines. See a little tiny line there to indicate form on the abdomen, some rib cage perhaps. I'm going to do the stripes on her tube top. Keep these lines thin as well. They're just design lines on the surface. They don't in any way affect the surface texture of her tube top. I'm going to do the features of her face. These are very delicate. Don't rush anything. Take your time. Even though I'm rushing, you don't have a gun pointed to your head like I do. Doug usually likes to color in the lips black to indicate heavy contrast in color and light, like lipstick and stuff. I'm going to add a very thin outline on the top to indicate just a touch of light. And then he indicated a bigger highlight on her bottom lip, a circular one that overlaps the outer contour of her bottom lip. Therefore, the line on her bottom lip doesn't connect. That just indicates a stronger highlight. Now we're going to do the form of her jaw here. Even if the details are quite small in the woman's face, you still got to keep in mind that you want to be very clean and graceful with it. Pay attention to expressions too. You don't want to ink downward angry eyebrows on a face that's supposed to be distressed. You know, she's got a look of distress on her face. So if you want to play up a little bit on the eyebrows, as far as curving the ends of it up, now if the penciler has done its job, you don't have to worry, really. But you never know if you have to ink over a weak penciler. Okay, now I'm going to the hair. It's going to be pretty tedious here. It's all over the place. This is where I get ridiculously close. My eyes are almost right on the paper itself. Now, all the lines within the hair are very thin. I've already established the thicker lines in the dark areas, so the rest of the lines will be really thin. If I make them too thick, it defeats the purpose of having it being in the light area. You're just going to darken that area of the hair. Now I'm going to try to do some feathering from the light areas into the black area. Right now, even looking at it, it almost seems like for a person with dark hair, it's too much of a contrast. It's too much black, too much white, not so much in between. I'm going to blend those two together a little bit more to make it look more like a single unit. And the feathering on here doesn't have to be super consistent or perfect, but I like to keep it that way in hair. It's a stylistic preference, especially if you want attractive looking inked hair. To have lines all over the place isn't going to do it any good. It's just going to look messy. Some type of directional form and volume to the hair. Generally, when the hair flows out, you don't want to do hatching or cross hatching, vertically if the hair is flowing horizontally. You want to do it in the direction of the hair. I'm going to do the same technique here. I'm going to feather into the backs to make the whole thing more cohesive, just like that. Got some hair coming from the root and flowing all the way out to the edge. And it's not a really smooth edge there on the black, so I'm going to go over it, touch it up, smooth that line out a bit. Thin line right here, I'm going to flow that into this line, into the bigger, darker area. Throw in a couple extra lines to fill up some of the gaps. If there's too much awkward white gaps in the hair, I'll fill with a few lines flowing in the direction of the hair. I'm going to throw in a few more lines at the part near the root. More lines there. Bring this line over a little bit. That looks good. There's a little bit over here on her shoulder that I gotta ink. Here we go. I'm just gonna blacken this part in. It's not gonna fit with the rest of the hair. A little white area. That's good. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw in a few more stray fine lines out from the edge of the hair, from the black parts. So what I'm gonna do is take the fine brush, throw out some really thin, random, wispy lines, just like that. I'm doing it from the blacks out. I'm actually just swiping it out really quickly with a light touch in the general direction. Hair is also a texture. You can cross the hairs at some points, give it a little bit more of a wispy quality. I'm going to throw some more down here. You can go into the blacks, almost like a feathering, although that kind of slows me down. I mean, if it's no method behind wispy hair, just swipe it out quickly. Now let's move to the monster now. We're going to get some fine brushwork now. Basically, the monster is just all texture, so I'm going to do more texture stuff with the monster. These are going to be thin lines with a little bit of variation in them, just broken lines, irregular, some angular. And I'm just quickly zipping right through, doing all the major lines that would indicate wrinkles, folds, and bumps. Right now I'm starting near the top of his head. I'm not really thinking about it, but as I'm going along, as you can see, I'm just adding some dots and broken lines. Just one of those things when I'm thinking a lot and I just kind of go into autopilot mode. I know the basic idea I have to convey through my lines, so that's what I'll do. Now there's another set that intersects it. I might not worry about that now. I'm just going to continue on with some fine line work with skin. Now as I get closer to the black areas, like right now, when I'm doing the texture work, I will thicken up my lines just a bit. Here's a series of really short, small feather lines here. Throw that in. I'm just quickly filling out the lines here. Random, irregular lines. No reason for you to spend more time than you have to trying to make them look nice and pretty. The average viewer of art is only going to be impacted by the overall look of the art, not its tiny little components made up of little lines. Although some hardcore art lovers will look that closely. Since I'm under deadline and I have plans, I'm not going to do that. Now, even though I said that texture is random, like on say, a monster skin, there is somewhat, as you can see, a directional flow of the texture itself as it wraps around the back and also as it goes down the head of the monster. So I guess I take back what I said about pure randomness, but do keep a little things in mind. If the penciler put the effort into giving it some type of direction or form, then you should give as much attention to that. So you're trying to achieve two tasks. One is texture, and the other is directional flow. A good philosophy that I adhere by, fellow pro